Good morning, my friends. Good morning on this wonderful Wednesday morning. It's getting brighter by the day. In Ireland, yesterday was the first sunny day in a long run, and today seems to be the same. The sun is out and there are no clouds to be seen at the horizon even, so it's quite promising, but it's still very cold. And I'm sitting inside because I'm a bit under the weather. I got blocked nose, sore throat, and a little bit of chesty cough, so this week that I'm having off my work is spent indoors mostly, taking it easy, preparing for the next week when I'm going back to work and going back to my daily routine, which involves a lot of physical activity. So I have to take it easy and have proper rest and let my body cure itself. And speaking of cures, there's a death cure. This is the third book in the series, Maze Runner, the Maze Runner series. And here's the first one, The Maze Runner, the original book. And the second one is The Scorched Trials, Death Cure, and The Kill Order. And these are 4 books in the Maze Runner series. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, right? Let me tell you right off the bat, my friends. The Maze Runner, one of the best dystopian fiction books you will ever get your hands on. If you start reading it, you will be drawn in. I could literally not fall asleep until 1 o'clock in the morning on most days. Basically, I was doing the reading for 1.5 to 2 hours a night. And what's so great about these books is the actual concept, right? So I'm not going to reveal everything to you because obviously if the storyline is revealed, then you might not find it so interesting to read the actual fiction. It's the same as with the movies and films. If someone tells you the plot and you know what to expect, then there are no surprises. So that surprise element is removed, and it's not so exciting actually to enjoy that particular piece, whether it's movie or a book or wherever it might be, But I'm just going to tell you the main storyline. So basically, the main character in the in the Maze Runner series is a guy called Tom, right? And he wakes up in this huge elevator, and he's being brought there's upwards movement. Basically, the elevator is moving up, and he hasn't got a clue why he's in this massive elevator, who he is, what's his name. He has no recollection of anything. Basically, he has no memories. They've been wiped out. But obviously, at that stage, he doesn't know who's wiped them out and what's actually happening. And then after an hour's journey, a hatch is actually opened, and he sees blue skies, and there's a bunch of guys talking to him in this weird slang, in the weird lingo, and that's another distinction in this book. Those kids, basically it's about children, it's kind of children's fiction, but it's very, very entertaining for any adult, I believe so, because I'm an adult myself. I'm 34 years old now, and I enjoyed every single minute I spent reading these books, right? Basically all these kids are speaking this weird lingo and are pointing at Tom, and he has no understanding why he's here and what's going on. And then he gets pulled up onto the surface, and basically he finds himself in the middle of a massive, massive maze. It's like a labyrinth, and then it turns out that these kids have been living there in that secluded space. There's a big area where they have their main building, they have gardens to tend and animals to breed. Basically, they're self-sufficient bunch of guys, and there are no girls. They're only lads, fellas, boys, obviously, right? Male representatives of the human species. So you kind of get the feeling that there's some weird experiment going on, obviously, right? And basically, there's 4 doors, 4 exits into the maze in all 4 directions, and at night time those doors close because monsters are being let out into the maze, so nobody is allowed into the maze after the nightfall. When the doors close, all the guys go indoors and stay there overnight because they know for a fact that there are some monsters lurking into the maze. and they've had some bad, deadly, to be more specific, experiences with those monsters. So basically there's no escaping them. Any encounter with those monsters will end lethally. And there are certain rules that they all go by. Basically, you are not allowed into the maze at nighttime. It's basically a rule. If you don't abide by that rule, then you're going to be cast out from that society, And then there's a bunch more rules I don't really remember because it's been quite a while since I actually read the book. I was actually reading this one around Christmas. But it's been a good few months now. And I actually forgot the very fine details, but I basically remember the main gist of the story, And Tom, basically, over the course of next weeks, he actually defies many of those rules. He gets out into the labyrinth, he encounters those monsters, and not that only he doesn't get killed by them, but he actually escapes them, and he finds a way to fight those monsters. And then all the next events take very unexpected turns, and there's a girl appearing who knows Thomas's name, and he doesn't have a clue how he knows that girl, but he has the vague feeling, Long story short, I don't really actually remember how this particular book ended. They actually escaped the maze. They were led by Thomas, and they found a way out, and it turns out that it was all a sick experiment, masterminded by some sick people, twisted people, and they all got saved, and that's the second book, The Scorched Trials. Now, in the end of this book, they basically get saved, they get rescued, and they end up in a world that they didn't have a clue existed. The world is not the way we know it now. It's a post-apocalyptic world. It's a typical dystopian setting. Dystopian means that there's some huge disaster having had happened. Like a nuclear holocaust or some plague or some terrible disease, and basically the world has changed, humans have changed, the society as we know it has ceased to exist, and it's all the common denominator in all dystopian fiction, and this is a very vivid example of the dystopian fiction. Basically, the world as we know it has stopped existing, and society works by new rules, and basically these guys who escape the maze are told that there's these cranks, so-called cranks. They're like zombies, They are humans who are contaminated by some terrible disease that affects your brain, and basically you lose your mind over time. You become like a zombie. You become more and more like animal, and you have less control over your instincts, and basically if you become a crank in the very last stages of the disease, you just go totally nuts. You start killing others, you would eat your fellow human beings, and you wouldn't have a clue what's going on. You basically act like an animal, and only on the odd occasion you would have a short glimpse into who you actually are. You might have a feeling that you are this person, but then the next moment that feeling is gone and you act all weird again. And they have an encounter with those cranks. Basically, when they're rescued, they're led into a separate room where they sleep. Basically, they're very tired, and there was an incident where they see those cranks at the windows get open somehow, and there's cranks outside, and they're trying to get in, but there's obviously rails on the other side of the windows, and they're grabbing the rails and shouting over top of their voice, and they can see that those people are totally mad, and they're all scared, and the whole experiment begins again. They can't find their rescuers the next morning, and they find out that it's all another experiment, so they're basically rescued from the maze, and they're led into this facility where they put through a series of different tasks that they have to accomplish once more, and basically the mastermind behind the whole thing has been capable of predicting every single turn of event, you know. Every eventuality has been predicted, pre-programmed actually, and basically the whole thing is predetermined. No matter what they do, no matter what they act, those people behind it all, you know, they're actually being monitored the whole time. They can actually, it's to their benefit that they act this or that particular way, no matter what they do. It's all part of those, what's it called? They have a specific name for it. Variables, yeah, variables, you know. It's all the variables, and basically no matter what they do, it's all, those people behind it already know what they're going to do, and they're prepared for everything, you know, so there's no escaping. And obviously technology involved in this massive, huge scale experiment is totally mind-blowing. We can't even imagine what it would be like to be controlled in an environment where every single action that you might do is they have calculated the possible consequences and what they would do in order to counteract it, you know. So no matter what they do, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try to escape or do something unexpected, it's already kind of expected by those people observing you. So you're basically like a lab rat in a massive scale experiment, you know. You're not just restricted to a box, but in the first instance, in the Maze Runner book, it was the maze that they were in, you know, and in the Scorch trials, they are ordered to cross a huge wasteland of scorching heat, you know. It's a desert, and they find out the hard way that the world has completely changed. The sun is so hot that it's actually burned, it's scorched the whole land. There's no life, you know, and obviously life on the planet is only restricted to certain areas, but for the most part it's a desolate desert, you know. Desert. I keep mixing up these two words, desert and desert, you know. It's a bit weird. I'm apologizing for it, guys, you know. Desert, yeah. And basically their new task is to cross, hence the name, the Scorch trials. Basically, you get out there, you are scorched by the sun, and you cannot even reveal your skin to the sun because you'll be dead within minutes. So you have to cover up your whole body, you have to wrap up yourself tightly, and you have to carry supplies with you, some water, some food, some very basic things, some staples that you might need, and they have to walk for tens of miles, 100 miles, 200 miles if I'm not mistaken, you know. That's the distance they have to cover, and every now and then they again encounter some unexpected events, and they're all tests. It's all part of a massive, large-scale test, and then they find themselves in a crank-populated city, you know. Basically, it's one of the cities. I forgot which city it was. It was a well-known American city anyway. So basically, they find out that all the people are gone, and the few people that are left are living in close-knit small communities, like gangs, basically, and they're very ruthless, and they have actually an encounter with one of those gangs, and the gang leader becomes their friend eventually, you know. And it's mind-blowing. The whole plot is so interesting, you know. I had never read anything like this, you know. I'd never seen the like, because I kept imagining all those scenes in front of my eyes, you know. That's what happens, obviously, when you read something, and it's just amazing, guys, you know. And the language used in these books is plain. It's quite straightforward, very simple. It's the ideal read for the average foreign English speaker. So if you're a foreigner and you're in a lookout for a good English fiction to read, which is easy to understand, which is very entertaining, and which will keep you glued to the book, you know, to the pages. This is the fiction you definitely need to look into. The Maze Runner, Scorch Trials, and The Death Cure is the third book, and basically they find people behind the whole experiment, and they fight the system, you know. and in a weird twist of fate, Thomas discovers that he's actually part of those people who are masterminds behind all these tests, you know, and to his dismay, he starts remembering things, and basically it's a terrible blow to his own morale, because he feels hard done by, and yet at the same time he realizes that he was the one helping those people to design the maze in the first place, you know. And I'm not going to reveal anything more about that, you know. And the Kill Order is the first book, and it's the prequel. This book describes the events leading up to all the events described in these 3 books, you know, and it's featuring different characters. Thomas is not there. Actually, the very end of the book begins by Thomas, being very little, and he's taken away from his mother, and then he's taken away by those scientists. And I'm not going to delve any deeper into this, you know, but this is how the world actually plunged into the chaos, what led to that terrible disease that turns people into these walking zombies, you know, and why the solar activity destroyed half of the planet, and the civilization as we know it is just wiped out, you know. Why? We find it all out in this book. This is the last book I actually read, but you may want to start reading the Maze Runner series with the first book, you know, with the Kill Order, which is the last, but it's actually the prequel, so it would make a logical sense actually to read this one first, you know. So basically, if you're looking for the perfect English fiction to read, which is very entertaining and written using very simple language, to be honest with you guys, I don't read books which are not written using plain language. And children's books, these are typical teenagers' books, you know. My daughter reads them, and that's how I got to know this type of fiction, you know, dystopian fiction, because of my daughter and her involvement in this type of fiction. And she reads the whole time. She's her own bookshelf, and it's full with books, and she has Kindle ebook reader, and she's been reading plenty of books on that, and she downloads some free books on her iPod, and basically she reads the whole time, as does my other daughter, because initially she wasn't into that sort of thing, and then she got hooked on it by reading the Hunger Games. Is it a trilogy or one book? I'm not really sure. I know for a fact there's a couple of films in the Hunger Games series. There's 2 films for definite, but whether there's 2 or 3 books in the series, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's how my other daughter started reading, and then she was drawn into it, and now they're both reading, you know, which I'm very pleased with, because I think that when you read, you broaden your horizon, to develop your imagination, you develop yourself as a person, you know. Basically that's it, my friends. If you're looking for perfect English fiction to read, then you needn't be looking any further than the Maze Runner series, guys. This is one of the best fiction I've ever read in my life, in my entire life. I am not exaggerating, guys, and that's about it, you know. Read the Maze Runner series. It's ideal for the average foreigner out there who's on a lookout for the perfect English fiction to read. You can take my word for it. Okay, bye-bye, guys. See you.